How the Indian Space Research Organization tried to reconnect with the Vikram lander before the lunar night, by Arun Dev. On 21 September, a cold lunar night will cover the south pole of the moon, ending the last ray of hope for re-establishing communication with the Vikram lander, the efforts for which began minutes after it lost communication with the Indian Space Research Organization just 2 kilometers away from the lunar surface on 7 September. In a possible indication of the end of efforts to communicate with the lander, on 17 September, ISRO had tweeted, "Thank you for standing by us. We will continue to keep going forward, propelled by the hopes and dreams of Indians across the world." Again, on 19 September, when ISRO released its latest update on the Chandrayaan-2 mission, it spoke only about the orbiter conducting experiments and a national committee probing the reason for the loss of communication. There was no mention of re-establishing communication Vikram lander in this release. So, how did ISRO try to re-establish contact with Vikram lander during the last 2 weeks? At the heart of ISRO's attempt to re-establish contact with Vikram lander was the Indian Deep Space Network (IDSN) in Bailalu in the outskirts of Bengaluru city. IDSN is a network of large antennas and communication facilities meant to provide communication support to India's interplanetary spacecraft missions. In Chandrayaan's case, it was a 32-meter antenna which was supporting the Mars orbiter mission that was employed to re-establish contact. According to a scientist, the frequency for communicating with Vikram was already in place, and since losing communication at regular intervals, commands were sent to the lander to activate the probe. The hopes of a reply were dependent on 3 transponders and a phase array antenna on the lander, meant for receiving commands from the ISRO. Earlier news reports, based on the initial images captured by the orbiter, suggested that the lander was in a tilted position. This was cited as a possible reason for the equipment malfunction. While ISRO has not officially confirmed whether the equipment was damaged, a scientist told the Quint that not getting a signal from the lander indicates possible damage to the communication devices on board. ISRO was also trying to find if the solar panels meant for powering the lander were operational, but lack of communication with the lander left this unanswered as well. Apart from sending signals from Bengaluru, attempts were made to communicate with the lander using the Chandrayaan orbiter, since the orbiter and its payloads were operational. According to sources, even minutes after losing control, attempts were made to communicate with the lander using the orbiter. Although the orbiter couldn't communicate with the lander, it took photographs. US media reported that NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter snapped a series of images of Vikram's attempted landing site near the moon's uncharted south pole during the flyby on 17 September, and the agency is currently analyzing these pictures. Even though ISRO is unable to communicate with the lander and the rover, the mission is still on. Out of the 14 payloads on the Chandrayaan-2 mission, 8 scientific instruments were on board the orbiter, while the lander and rover had 4 and 2 instruments respectively. So, despite losing communication with the lander and the rover, the 8 instruments on board the orbiter will continue the mission. This equipment is expected to perform the tasks like mapping the lunar surface, examining the presence of major elements, measuring the intensity of the solar radiation, and looking for water on the moon. The current setback does not affect anything on ISRO's agenda, as the space agency has planned a mission to study planets like Venus, Mars, and even the Sun in the coming few years. Apart from that, ISRO's first manned mission, Gaganyaan, will take its first flight in December 2020 and send 3 Indians to space by December 2021. ISRO recently completed the first phase of training of astronauts for Gaganyaan mission. But for now, on 21 September, the attempts to communicate with the lander will come to an end as the systems are not expected to survive the cold lunar night.